Well, you better pad up, Doctor. Taking a terrible thrashing. I made a duck.
What a very silly activity.
I think so. As a boy, I always wanted to...
Pull to open.
Pull to open!
Yes, and what do you do?
It's a little naughty, really.
I think it's a great hoot.
Perfectly ripping performance.
Great what?
Oh.
I don't think I could do it.
Yes, you can. Just follow me. Come on.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest in podcast form to watch literally all of the TV show Doctor Who in entirely random order. My name's Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Paschal, and Chris and I are a couple of guys, couple of handsome guys, couple of well-dressed guys here in 2023, continuing our journey to review the program known as Doctor Who, of course, in random order. And it's going well so far, I would say.
I would say too. We have been to some very interesting places, not necessarily the best places in Doctor Who history, but this is what we do. We go to all the places in Doctor Who history. And here is where we've been 3 episodes ago. We were at that amazing Master Trilogy, our last, so far, dip into New Who, with Utopia, Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords, the Master Trilogy. We had a fun old time doing that. 2 episodes ago, y'all, we were in the Wild West with bad accents, not just like mine, in the Gunfighters, that Hartnell historical. Last time we went to the previous Hartnell episode. That's where the randomizer took us, just one step backwards into our first missing story, the entirely appropriate for 2023 Celestial Toymaker. And we had an interesting time there. Not necessarily as good a time as we might have expected, but an interesting time.
It was like our first consecutive episodes, I guess, if you think about it. And I mean, consecutive by way of the randomizer. But I mean, if you think about time, is the fact that it progresses toward the future a real thing, or is that just our perception? Because arguably it goes backwards.
I think the latest theory is that all of Doctor Who happens at once, and this is just our timey-wimey way of making sure it doesn't happen all at once, so we can perceive it all. A little bit of a physics joke there. But anyway, we moved from the Celestial Toymaker, we escaped the toy room, and we moved to 1925 England, and a game of cricket, and a costume ball that we like to call Black Orchid.
The most botany-rific episode of Doctor Who. There's actually, give it credit. There is an orchid in this, and it is black.
It is black. So, it lives up to the billing. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It provides a black orchid and a mystery around a black orchid that's not really much of a mystery.
And notably, it's the last of the pure historicals in the entire series, I believe. There hasn't been a real pure historical in New Who, right? So
there was the Unicorn of the Wasp, which was this plus a mild amount of alienness.
Yeah, there's a giant bug, so...
Yeah, that's as close as New Who got. But yeah, this was it.
Yeah, this was it. I mean, it was kind of a... we'll get into it on either why or how good an idea it was to do a pure historical. But
I think we got to talk about the possibility of doing more bingos, and maybe you and I can do a special episode where we divide up the bingos between us, because we're approaching a bingo on 2 episode classic stories.
I know we are. Is there only one left? And I know we've been bad at.
Well, there was
how many episodes episodes are in every story, but
we've done this. We did the rescue.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's Edge of Destruction left, and Sontaran Experiment.
There's one more, The Awakening, another Jameson. So we're not as close as you think. So there's at least 3 more, right? Okay. So like you mentioned them, but yeah, The Awakening. I remember that one too. It has a big face in a wall.
I gotta say,
anything memorable.
The other memorable thing about Black Orchid and the rescue, and that the whole 2-episode nature of like classic stories, like it's that makes it a new Who story, right? So it's a nice and easy lift. So I had this gentle memory of doing the rescue because it was so sort of inoffensive at 2 episodes. I feel like I'm going to have the same sort of gentle, nice memory of Black Orchid once it fades into the rearview mirror. So.
Well, I appreciate also that it's very friendly to our schedules of figuring out how to sort of watch and research during the week.
It is.
And I think I'm purposely saying that to jinx us on the randomizer later so that we get like the Daleks master plan or something.
But certainly the 1925 setting and the upper class Cranley estate that we're in for this definitely made me up my costume game. So here I am in my Tom Baker tie, as you can see on Spotify and YouTube. I'm ready.
It's a smaller meal when you do the 2 episoders, but this one's definitely sort of a 5-star restaurant meal that leaves you wanting for more, but you're kind of glad you dine there just because for the experience.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And what an experience! Is it also the last of the doppelgangers? That's what I want to know.
Oh yeah,
So many
good
doppelgangers in
question.
Doctor Who.
I don't think so. Might be. I don't know. Someone tell us if it's not. But we'll get to it. We're going to go talk about Black Orchid in a few minutes. But first, of course, listeners, we're going to enter the pull to open feedback loop as we always do. And of course, the first thing I must remind everyone when I get into the loop is we adore listeners who leave reviews. Reviews are amazing. They're great for podcasts. They really help the show. If you go to the Apple Podcast app and leave a review, you could do that right now. Just pause the playback. Go ahead, leave a quick one. It could be just a few words. It can be just a few characters, perhaps even a few emojis.
That's right.
Like.
I'm going to give you the idea right now, free on the air, for the emoji review of Black Orchid, and it'd just be a flower. I guess maybe with one of the black dots next to it, and then two girl emojis looking exactly the same.
Well, this is actually one of the episodes where we did get an emoji title. This is a while back. This was,
we did. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a longtime friend of the pod, Bob Gibley, and it's almost like you could sort of pick and choose. He gave a series of emojis, and so you're dead on the black, or like already you got the black dot and the flower, so that's enough. But there's also a cricket bat emoji.
Oh.
There's a cookie emoji and a cupcake emoji and a glass of wine emoji, and I think all of that is to emphasize there's a lot of eating and drinking in this episode, and it's generally festive. So
I was going to say, is he just like typing out everything that Adric ate at the buffet?
I think that would be a very long emoji title.
Yeah,
if they did indeed.
The story is kind of famous for Adric eating a lot. Anyway, speaking of eating a lot, we will eat a lot of your reviews.
Yeah.
If you leave them, we will eat as many emoji reviews as you take it. Even if you want to leave your own Black Orchid review, we'll add that to the Codex.
Do it. We were just as we're doing now, we're doing some TikTok lives before every podcast, and we just had a little chat with someone who did like the episode, and it's one of her favorites. And so, yeah, feel free, Phoebes, if you're around.
Phoebes,
go ahead.
Yes.
Get us leave us a review and tell us what you thought of Black Orchid in that review.
And thank you, Phoebes, for being the first listener to join the actual live. We were talking with you live. That was pretty amazing. So
I'm kind of jumping around the feedback loop here, but burying the lead in that, like if you missed us last week, we are now doing TikTok lives. Every time we sit down to tape an episode, we're going to be going live with you guys for a few minutes before, answer questions, nerd out the show, which we like to do, maybe even discuss some theories live. That's what we like to do. So do that. We're at Pull to Open on Twitter. Be one of our 10,000 plus followers. We're about 10,200 now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we'll be doing more lives. And if you have technical know-how on how to better do lives, because we might need a little bit of tips, but we're going to get this thing polished, guys. So
I definitely feel like I'm like, General Zod in the Phantom Zone, like just in the back of the live right now. I'm kind of trapped in that Phantom Zone window. Yeah, get me out of there. So I believe we have some fans in certain countries who are joining us at a prodigious rate.
Yeah, so guys, I mean, wherever you are in the world, whether it's, say, the Netherlands, perhaps New Zealand, perhaps France, and I see you guys because I see how our podcast ratings do in those countries, please go ahead and leave a review. We'll see it. We have ways of finding out who's leaving what reviews, not who, but like we're seeing the reviews in other countries. So we'd be happy to read out your review on the podcast. Really, whatever you say or whatever you think of the show, we want to hear from you. We'll take notes. We'll take notes.
That's
Just
right.
Like the Doctor Who production team. We'll take notes on what we could do better.
Maybe,
but yeah, it'd be great.
Maybe
if you
leave your country flag at the start of the review just to tell us where you're from. That'd be awesome. But Netherlands, New Zealand, France, I've always loved those countries. Thank you so much for supporting us.
Yeah, let us know what emojis are popular in your country, perhaps.
Yes, the bread and cheese emoji, kind of obvious for France. I believe there's a baguette that you could use.
So even if you can't spare a review wherever you are in the world, feel free to rate us, and you can rate us however you want. For some reason, the number 5 is in my head. So if you have a number of stars in front of you, maybe pick 5 to leave, because that would be amazing if you could.
5 stars. Leave 5 stars and then leave 5 stars again in your burner account. Yes. Meanwhile,
Speaking of stars and thumbs up, hey, there's other places you can interact with us, and a big one is YouTube. So we are at, of course, youtube.com/pull-to-open. We are uploading some older episodes of the podcast every Wednesday from season 2 of Pull to Open, currently in season 4. Season 4, of course, keeps coming every Saturday. And we're just about to hit 500 subs there on YouTube, which is going to be great when we hit that. But really, we also want to aim for 1,000 subscribers here in 2023. So if you're subscribing to us on YouTube, go ahead, keep sharing out the podcast there. Go ahead and interact with our shorts, all of our social media videos, the ones we primarily share out on TikTok. Those are all there. And you get them nicely organized into playlists. You can see all of our plot summaries and playlists, and special bonus that I've actually never mentioned on the podcast. Going forward, the plot summaries will be formatted for YouTube. Which is to say, they won't be that squeezed vertical format that you see on TikTok. So
I did notice that.
I
did notice that because guess who just subscribed to our YouTube channel last night? That would be me. I'm one of these 500. That's right. We did not inflate the numbers. We want this to be an accurate number, so I've only just joined. But anyway, I'm very excited to be one of Pull to Open's newest subscribers. You can be too. And we're also, I know you don't necessarily hear this a lot with YouTube, but we're getting some good comments.
Yes. We actually even have our comment of the week is from YouTube, and I really like this comment because it's just nerding about the show in the best way possible. So this is on one of our older podcasts. It was for our review of The Deadly Assassin.
That's right.
And
which I'm actually going to connect to Black Orchid later. Remind me about that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm into that. Stay tuned. And this comment comes from someone with the handle Ravelox?
Ravelox, maybe. Yeah, it looks very French. Maybe one of our French fans.
Revol? Sorry if I'm butchering that. But I really like this comment. It says, I love the opening credits. Now, this is referring to the opening after the actual opening credits when they do in The Deadly Assassin. It's like this rolling scroll that has some narration from Tom Baker that talks about how the ancient race of the Time Lords, etc. So they're campy, of course. This is the comment continuing. They're campy, of course, but they immediately give an impression of the epicness and mythicness of the Doctor's homeworld and the events which unfold. This isn't just another Doctor Who adventure, but a tale of 2 Time Lords battling it out in the ancient society of Gallifrey. I think the Time Lords being corrupt versus the Time Lords being omnipotent is a false dichotomy. I think they could be both. And The Deadly Assassin balances this well, whereas later stories can gravitate towards making them too inept and ordinary, where the Doctor walks all over them. As for the lack of regenerations in an episode which relies on regeneration as a major plot point, it does seem like a huge oversight. I explain it away in my headcanon by saying that stasers, as Time Lord weapons, are designed to avert the regenerative process somehow. And maybe Runcible, who got stabbed, as I recall, was just at the end of his cycle, like Goth, or maybe he was a Shobogan or a Time Lord Academy dropout who didn't have regen powers. Cool. Like, this is a great comment, first of all. It's got a lot of fun fan headcanon, making connections, which is exactly what we do in the podcast, so I love it.
Yes.
And I think they're dead on about the stasers. I'm going to say that right away, because I think you kind of have to think that if a staser is going to be effective as a deadly weapon, it's got to be able to kill Time Lords, even despite regeneration. So, and this is the race that would obviously have thought that through completely in designing the weapon.
It is, yeah. And it's not, so we've also been to Hellbent, where the Doctor shoots and deliberately induces a regeneration in a Time Lord. Presumably that isn't a staser, is a different kind of staser.
Well, you also have to, you're right. That doesn't sync with that. You'd have to easily explain, though, if like they have different settings.
Yes. You could totally imagine a Time Lord weapon with different numbers on it, and that's the number of regenerations you're going to take when you shoot.
That would be great if, like, some companion later is fumbling with the staser. Why does this have 12 settings? It's like, number of regenerations, you'll take it away.
I love this. I love this comment for so many reasons. One of the reasons I think is he says A Tale of Two Time Lords, which I think is such a great name for Doctor. Should have been the name of the two Doctors, really.
Ooh,
more exciting.
Yeah.
Could be the name of any Doctor and Master matchup. But yeah, RTD, use that. Please go ahead and use that as a very intriguing title for a story.
The last little bit here about Runcible touches on something. I don't know if it's correct, because Runcible and the Doctor were apparently in the same class.
Right.
But it brings up something that has never been fully explored, which is that I believe the assumption is all Time Lords are Gallifreyan, but not all Gallifreyans are Time Lords. So where the line is has always been super gray. Like, is it? Are they mostly Time Lords? Is it just the elite class, which I think is a bit of the default view? But if you think about it, rarely do we see people from Gallifrey not regenerating, notwithstanding the stuff that he mentions here, right, in classic series. So I kind of like that this is still a bit mysterious, but I also partly because I think it's just something that they could flesh out, when they want to.
Yeah. Well, you got to think about it. So the Doctor is like 4 regenerations in when he re-meets Runcible, who also somehow recognizes him. We talked about that during the Deadly Assassin. And maybe it's just like, maybe Runcible has kind of burned through his regenerations. Maybe he's on his 12th. I'm flashing on a wonderful notion of like a Time Lord yearbook, where you've had people voted, most likely in their class to use up their 12 regenerations the fastest. maybe that's what Runcible did. You live large,
live fast, die hard.
Exactly.
Well, if you think about like a Time Lord society, they must have access to all the hard drugs in the universe. So, if you want to live hard as a Time Lord, you certainly can.
And Runcible is a Time Lord journalist, so he's clearly a glutton for punishment.
Right. Maybe in his younger days, he was like Hunter S. Thompson and just running
Time
around. Staying on Scarrow and
Gonzo journalist. Oh my god! Now I really want to see Runcible as Hunter S. Thompson. Please, RTD, make that happen. Oh my god! Yeah, that would be such. He's doing so many deep cuts for the Hartnell fans at the moment. Let's do a deep cut for the Deadly Assassin fans,
especially because he's got the diamond logo. I mean, it's, basically an invitation.
Yeah.
Anyway, great comment. Love the discussion. Keep it coming, everybody on YouTube, TikTok, and the other social platforms. Of course, we're also on Twitter and Instagram at Pull2Open63. Closing out the loop. Not a lot of Doctor Who news these days. We're here in the winter doldrums in January, but there was a little bit of something, not barely anything this week, but it got me to notice that Millie Gibson is on Twitter, apparently.
Oh, okay.
So Millie Gibson, as fans know, is the new companion. She has yet to appear on screen, but she's been cast. as Ruby Sunday. That's her character's name. She's going to be accompanying Ncuti Gatwa in the TARDIS when it returns for season 14 after the specials, or so we think. Anyway, that's everything's set up for that. But she's apparently on Twitter as I think it's Millie Gibson 01. Check that out. Don't quote me on that, but it is I think that's her handle. It's not a blue check
official.
mark.
She's not a blue check mark.
The thing, but does that even mean anything, right? Because that's Twitter blue now, right? Like there's the other check mark. So I'm taking it to, because she was cited in a Radio Times article,
yes,
and quoted at a tweet, I'm going to take that to be Radio Times is decent. I mean, I think that's confirmation probably that she's on Twitter. So follow her on Twitter, and she apparently thinks in a tweet that Matt Smith was hot.
Wow.
Which is like, that's great. Good for, yeah. I mean, it's like, this actually brings up something a little bit in that, like, when I first saw her and Ncuti Gatwa together, you kind of see them. They're both these very incredibly attractive actors who are going to be entertaining us on screen. But just as characters, I think it's going to be tough to get away from the chemistry and sort of the on-screen expectation. Like, why aren't these two just hooking up?
Right.
Like, it's gonna be interesting. And RTD is good at this, right? He did the whole Rose thing, he did the whole Martha thing. So I look forward to him understanding that expectation and subverting it in interesting ways.
I love the idea that a companion, that we put this in show, and that a companion is actually just has the hots for a previous regeneration of the Doctor. She's just sort of hanging around Ncuti's regeneration in case he kind of meets his old self. Like, that's, this is her backstage pass.
Oh, that'd be amazing if they're like, there's like a Two Doctors story where Smith comes back or something, and she's like, aren't you going to introduce me?
Yeah, and she may actually cross over into that. Like, we'll just insert her in the background of various Smith stories now. That would be like, fantastic.
Can I tag along with you this version of you? Can I do that?
So just to close the loop on that, here's what she actually did. 3 days ago. She was actually replying to a tweet from the official Doctor Who account, which had 4 Matt Smith photos and a quote from Matt Smith's Doctor with "He's so hot."
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like she was asked about this. She volunteered this information. So she clearly has a thing for Matt Smith. So I don't know if he's single right now, but yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, they're just part of the family. So
this is how it happens.
A little weird.
You know, I love it when celebrities kind of flirt with each other on Twitter. I wish Matt Smith was on Twitter so she could do this. I just remember the time that John Mayer kind of mentioned that he was really into Nicki Minaj, and she responded, "Will my body be your wonderland?" And he was like, he actually tweeted like, "Oh my God, this is really happening. I don't know what to say in response. Like, give me 5 minutes to come up with a really good response to that." And he tweeted that, and I'm like, "Oh, what a dummy!" Like, come up with something.
Yeah,
snappy.
come on, anyway. John. You know, get your team getting something together.
Exactly.
Anyway, the socials, they're fun to look at. Occasionally have a use, guys. So go ahead. Besides following us on there, go ahead and follow Millie.
That's right. If you want to flirt with us on social, that's where we are.
All right. Speaking of having the hots for previous Doctors, I think we got a transition.
Yes. time to have the hots for Davison in his dressing gown.
Yeah.
That'll be coming up. I'm sure we're going to talk about nearly naked doctors. This is one.
Are we? Okay. Yeah.
Well, I certainly am. I don't know about you, Pete. We had him in Spearhead from Space, and we have a nearly naked Doctor here, I believe.
Oh, it's like he's not really shirtless. Anyway, we'll get into it. Because we have to do something before we get into it. I'm up for the challenge.
Yep. So every time, with every story that we visit in random order, we do what we like to call TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, Too Long Doctor Who. Or in this case, some people might think too little Doctor Who. 2 episodes may not be enough to explore this world of the Cranleys. But we are going to summarize it, or rather, Pete is going to summarize it. It is his turn this week. In 30 seconds per classic episode, that's what we allot. So this is 1 minute. It's basically the same as a New Who. That's
Right.
how much time you have. Pete, you feeling confident that you can summarize Black Orchid in a minute?
Oh, God, whenever I feel confident, it turns out it's misplaced. So no, I do feel a little bit like I was born for this.
Yes.
Not really quite born, but I Fifth Doctor is my favorite era. I've seen Black Orchid repeatedly. I feel like I should be able to do this, but as we know in TLDW, with no notes, nothing to help me, going purely from memory. Not even the Zencaster I can see anymore.
Yeah, if you're looking for a
Uh,
rabbit hole to get stuck on, maybe you could describe everything that Adric eats at the buffet.
well,
That,
what I'm going to try to avoid is actually commenting on what's going on because I desperately want to throughout. So if I stick to the
exactly.
facts,
Just the
ma'am, I
facts,
think
man.
I should be able to do it. So I think
All
I'm
right.
ready. Hold on, quick swig of water, and I'm ready.
Yeah, okay. So Pete has all his tabs closed because we fly blind when we do this. We haven't written it in advance, as you can probably tell by the way that we're sort of sounding desperately like someone on a game show, which is exactly what we're going for here. So here we are. Pete is ready. He has his tabs closed, and we are going to do the official pull to open summary of Black Orchid in 1 minute, starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
So the Doctor, Tegan, Nyssa, and Adric arrive in 1925 England, and they are materialized on a railway station. The person waiting outside there actually says they're expected. They're expecting someone called the Doctor. Drives them to a place called Cranley Estate. The Doctor plays cricket. He seems completely expected and to play cricket for these guys. He's actually an amazing cricket player. So he wins for the Cranleys. They're asked to stay to have a good time at their fancy dress party, so they get ready. But the Doctor gets lost in a priest hole in the Cranley Estate. It's very big, and so he's
30
lost for a
seconds.
while. Everyone starts the party, and what happens is someone uses his costume, which is a harlequin that covers up his mask, to grab Anne Talbot, who is actually looks exactly like Nyssa. And the person tries to assault them because she tries to resist, is knocked out. While the Doctor gets lost, he finds a body, and then eventually finds his way back to the party thanks to Lady Cranley. But the person's murdered someone, and because of that, they get involved with it. Doctor gets arrested, blamed for the murder. They realize that the Cranleys have been keeping their brother George, who was tortured in South America, prisoner. He was the person responsible for the murders, but he tries to kidnap Nyssa because she looks like Anne. They talk him out of it. She gives him up, but he falls to his death. The TARDIS crew then just goes. They leave after the funeral. Bye.
Where we go. 1 minute 27 seconds. But I like that you just kept charging ahead. You did it. You did it regardless. Black Orchid is just such a relaxed story. It's very much the Doctor on holiday. So I think we can give you a little bit of wiggle room there. You basically took 30 of the extra seconds that would have been allotted had this been a 4-parter, had the budget not been spent by K9 and Company.
There you go. I'll take that.
So whenever we come to review K9 and Company, I'm gonna dock you 27 seconds.
Oh wow, that's true. It's not even really part of the Codex. So I'm thinking about what could I have left out? I mean, I feel like I was stumbled a little bit at the episode transition, but that wasn't that long.
Well, like the Doctor, I think you got stuck in the priest hole. I think you got stuck in all those extra corridors. I mean, the Doctor loves a good secret corridor. I mean, he loves corridors in general.
Yeah,
But
somehow he in 2 episodes. It's only 2 episodes long, yet Davison spends an inordinate amount of time in this adventure, wandering through corridors, and not even interestingly, like he's literally lost. He just doesn't know where, and he's just goofing around, and it takes him a while even to find the body.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, this is one of many things wrong with this story. But it's like if even in a 2-parter, less than an hour, you're spending a ton of time just wandering through sort of nameless, faceless corridors, I think it's very it's an indicative you've probably gone off the rails at some point.
Yeah. So it's kind of entirely appropriate that we got stuck in the corridor, stuck in the priest hole. And as a priest hole, to be honest, I mean, priest holes, so we should, I'm going to spend the only time in Chris's History Corner just on priest holes.
Do it.
It's the reason priest halls exist. If you don't know, it's because when Catholic priests were persecuted after the Church of England was established by Henry VIII because he wanted to divorce his wife. Catholicism became not the religion of the land. So Catholic priests who actually practiced had to be hidden, often in these so-called priest halls in estates and big country houses and that sort of thing. But they weren't sort of lavishly. They were halls, right? It was not like whole corridors of rooms,
towers even.
Yeah, exactly.
They did say, they had to sort of qualify that, even though it doesn't make a ton of sense. In that, at least they acknowledge it, right? They say, well, it's larger than your average priest hall, and she talks about, like our ancestors were incredibly generous, and basically people from the clergy would come there from all over the country, which is all right. Yeah, I guess that's why you have a bunch of secret doors. You could have just said it's Hogwarts.
Yeah, it's weird. Lady Cranley makes it a point of pride, and I wonder if she kind of knows that the Doctor is a time traveler, and is like, should you choose to visit this same estate in, say, the 17th century, like you went back for the visitation recently, should you go back there, come visit our priest hall, you will see how good we were to the Catholic priests.
Yeah, well, at least I didn't get trapped in that rabbit hole of the references that this season makes constantly to other adventure, the previous adventure, the next adventure.
Right.
Like they do mention that in the opener where they're in the TARDIS, and it's like, considering what we've just done to London, so immediately follows the visitation. And Tegan makes the point that, like, hey, I've said off screen now that I just want to stay, because the visitation at the very beginning of that episode, she was very intent on going home again. So that's like, clearly a decision was made, like, okay, we can't just keep having Tegan whine and complain about not being home. Let's have her actually part of the crew, which is
especially with a visit to Heathrow coming up after Earthshock. And that is very interesting from a pull to open perspective, that we've now visited both sides of Earthshock, right? So
we've bookended Earthshock. Like, it keeps missing the target. It's a target, and we've referenced Earthshock a lot, obviously, because it's the Cybermen and the Adrix. Spoiler alert: Adric dies in it. Check out our Face. I think that's it. It's our Face the Raven podcast that is Spooked Randomizer. It's like, let's not do that again. In terms of companion deaths.
Yeah, so the randomizer had to go almost immediately to Hell Bent, didn't it? Just to reassure itself that Clara would live on.
Right. Episode. Oh, sorry, I was off. Let's talk about Black Orchid here. It's a very weird episode.
It is.
For a lot of reasons. Not just because it's a historical, but it's, I don't mean weird bad. It is weird bad in some ways, but it's weird good in that it is a rare thing to have the Doctor expected, which I think is it works. One of the things that works really well about it, because they materialize on the platform, the guy sees them, and you assume it's mistaken identity, and it turns out it is. But it's like that line, "You are the Doctor." Just, and the music cue right then is great. Like, you're just like, wait a minute, and you're kind of with them, like, indeed. And he's kind of, Davison does a really good job as ever, but he's like, you get even from his delivery of the line, like, I'm gonna go with this for the time being, and
the Doctor never listened to his parents' advice to not go with strange men in cars, because he's all about it here. But it's never explained who this other Doctor is that he's
it is
impersonating. It is.
Yeah. So the thing is, Charles Cranley's friend, Smutty Thomas.
I laughed at Smutty Thomas.
Was supposed to send basically a cricketer.
Yes.
And I don't know why they call him the Doctor. My sense is that's a little bit of playing up the W.G. Grace connection, where I guess he was called the Doctor.
W.G. Grace was called the Doctor, and W.G. Grace was also called the Master, which is
Right.
they use to great effect when he meets Lord Cranley in what I think is the best moment in all of Black Orchid, where he's like, the master.
Yes.
And
Well,
the doctor's like,
again,
well,
but that also plays off that earlier moment, right? Where the doctor's
mhm,
expected, and you feel like, is this the payoff? Like, is this why
yes.
he's expected? And it's the master, and it's like maybe it's a master's plot, and there's a W.G. Grace, and then he's like, oh, but that does sort of, I guess, explain it in a sense, because I guess we take it to mean the doctor is somewhat almost a generic term for the person who's going to save your cricket match. I mean,
I
I guess it's almost like
guess.
a pinch hitter, for cricket or a sub. I don't know.
I don't know, but I gotta spoil our usual "Where is the Clara Splinter" moment at the end of the podcast. I'm gonna say the Clara Splinter is Smutty Thomas, who called up in the first place and said, you need to expect a guy called the Doctor. He's going to save your cricket match.
Interesting. That would fill in that blank. You got it. But they do
Also,
explain that there
gives
was
me
a
more
person.
opportunities to say Smutty Thomas, and the number of times I can say Smutty Thomas on this
Smutty.
podcast.
Much better
Smutty.
player than Smutty. That was a great line. I want to talk about Charles Cranley in a minute, but
Mm,
um, with all the mistaken identity stuff, that sort of came back around, and once you get the explanation, it's like, oh, I get it. He was supposed to be like, there was a person who was supposed to be on that train that
right.
missed their train. Um,
Bit
and
of a
it's
wild
really no more than that, which
coincidence.
again
Yeah.
is okay. It's okay to do sort of semi-ordinary things, and again, if they were more about this, and this is one of the biggest problem in my view with Black Orchid, is it can't really quite decide what it's being. Is
Yeah.
it subverting expectations of Doctor Who, which it does in a very basic way by sort of teasing these sort of elements, but and then ends up being a pure historical.
Mm,
And there's other things that it sort of doesn't seem to have the courage to follow through on. And the main one is the send up of upper class aristocratic British society, which it
yes.
seems like it wants to do, but never quite follows through on it.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, you sort of have the lightest, most gentle satire of that society. You have Adric
Yes.
wondering why you would have a cocktail in the bath. Um, it just sort of, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing really here, except when you sort of step back and realize at the end of the episode that the Cranleys were gaslighting the Doctor
Yeah.
about the whole George thing. They were going to set him up to be hung, which is
Yeah.
to be hanged. Sorry.
I
Yeah, no,
got what you
it's not
meant.
good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, going back to the dressing gown now.
Well, to
No,
your point, I mean, take a step back. The Cranleys are pretty despicable people.
they're assholes.
And
They're absolute assholes.
selling out not only just leaving the Doctor to hang out to dry, but
Yeah,
just how they've treated George this entire time.
yeah.
And the end, we're like all friends, and we had this fun ball together, and here's the book, and thanks for staying for the funeral.
They
Like,
stayed for the funeral.
wait a minute. They were absolute jerks, and they didn't there's been no accountability for what they did to George. The only
Yeah.
hint you get of it is where Charles snaps at his mother. You feel like he doesn't like what they've been doing to
Mm.
George, and he's finally saying something about it. It's just a hint, though. It never blows up into a full-on conflict. It's never explored. Again, 2 episodes, I guess, what would you do? But
Mm.
it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
The one thing that they did that I think is sort of unintentional satire now, it looks like unintentional satire now, is the fact that George dies basically because Charles wants to give him a hug.
Right.
And and he sort of takes a step back and he falls off the roof. And that to me seems to be the most English death ever. To die because you are afraid of getting hugged. And
Right.
it's only the most British upper class death you could possibly imagine. Unintentional satire, I think, but it sort of reads that way to me now. Like, oh, yeah, of course, that makes sense that he would die that way.
Well, I just found it like yeah, that's funny. Actually, I kind of like that now, but I just found it to be like the laziest writing,
Yes.
that you just have the bad guy who isn't even really bad fall off the roof, and that's a nice neat end, because now
Mm.
he doesn't have to be at the funerals for the servants. I guess. I mean, it must have been like a triple funeral, I guess, maybe. But
Oh God, you're right. We didn't even get mention of this funeral for the servants. Like, 2 have died.
yeah, there's the
It's-
guy in the cupboard, and of course, there's the guy that gets strangled. And there's these moments throughout that really, I think, are knowing satires of the society. This one I'm not that sure of, but a lot of the stuff in episode 1 is actually really amusing. But the climax of episode 1, I mean, it's the only climax other than the end, the cliffhanger. So Anne is calling out for help as George is manhandling her in the Harlequin costume.
Yes.
And the servant comes, the butler or whoever, he's just nameless, faceless Cranley servant. He takes the time to take the tray in his hand, I guess a tea service or something, and puts it down out of
Puts
his
it
way,
down.
away from the 2 of them. Like, he basically walks past them quickly, but he walks past them, puts the tray down on a table, and then turn around to help. Dude!
You know,
Girl,
you really can't get staff like that anymore these days. You know, butlers these days just use the tray as a weapon, just not even thinking of the tea service. But, you know, if you're a true Jeeves-like butler, you put the tea service down first. And this is maybe why you don't get staff like that anymore. And why, you know, in the 1920s in British country houses, you know, this is the sort of the end of the era of that sort of Downton Abbey, upstairs, downstairs kind of thing. Like, you know, where you stopped having servants in big houses because the families couldn't really afford it after World War One. You know, this is sort of the death of that era. But maybe it's also because this is the way they treated them, you know. A couple of murdered servants in this household over a weekend party, and it's just sort of brushed under the carpet. Who would want to go work for the Cranleys after that?
Yeah, totally. And I'd be curious to know if that was a deliberate choice to send up the idea of this ridiculous sort of upper class way of things, right? Because there's certainly moments of that earlier. Like the whole conversation with regard to Nissa, and they're asking, you know, where is she from? Is she in Easter? And then the Lady Cranley, who is great, by the way. I want to say I don't want to take anything away from the actors, who are amazing. I think the guest cast here is like one of the best of this era. But Lady Cranley is just like impossible. The hunt isn't good enough. You know,
they're also doing something which is so British and upper class here, which is sort of struggling through the cold, as it was very cold during those costume ball scenes, and they're outside in the freezing cold and occasional rain.
Wind. Like, everyone's hair is flapping like crazy,
but they're just sort of carrying on. It's very British, stiff upper lip. You know, keep calm and continue the costume party.
Yeah, I listened to the commentary, which was actually just the main cast, which was actually kind of nice, because it really spoke to how much fun I think they had filming this, even though they acknowledge it's not the greatest story. And there's something I never noticed, which was that it's clearly has rained outside. Like you look at the pavement in some of the scenes, you could see the reflection of the background in it. Which I'd never quite noticed before. I'd certainly noticed it was a bit overcast and wind. I mean, it's England, but
exactly. Maybe we just have to continue the party, continue the buffet. Only stop it if any servants are killed.
Right. Well, only
really
if they're not in a closet. Closet, and it's okay. Keep them in the closet. Don't trouble the guests. Like, some of this stuff is just incomprehensible, and even less comprehensible. The doctor just goes along with it. Like, it's like he finds the body in the cupboard, alerts Lady Cranley. She's like, "Please don't upset my other guests." And he's like, "Okay." You'd think he'd be like, "Well, I'm upset by it, and now I'm on the case." You know, like.
But no, he just puts on his Harlequin outfit and goes to the ball.
Yeah, because this happens all the time. You just find people in closets.
Sure.
Dead. He's just going to have a good time.
You know what I'm going to do? Put on a creepy Harlequin mask. It is actually one of the least believable things about the story, to my mind, is that the doctor would actually wear that mask once he's seen in the mirror how creepy it is.
Right.
And he'd actually go downstairs in it. Like, why? No, just wear the rest of the Harlequin costume.
I gotta say, I do like it though. I like it because it's creepy. It's an interesting looking thing. I wonder whatever happened to that costume. Did anyone ever? Who has it now? Like, that's a good cosplay right there.
Who has it now? Peter Davison.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
Sorry,
No,
that's my owl talking.
I do like. So I have so many questions about Black Orchid. However,
Shoot.
I want to preface. I want to
Okay.
preface it by saying that I actually kind of enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed episode 1
Okay.
because it's so rare to see the Doctor on holiday.
Yeah, I like
And
episode 1 is certainly the strongest of the two.
it's like what you always want for the TARDIS team is for them to
Mm.
just have a nice time. Like so
Yeah.
much of Doctor Who is about foiling their nice time. You know, they go to that crystal planet for midnight,
Right.
and Doctor takes a tour, and of course something's going to happen. You know, to the point where you got to wonder why the Doctor doesn't have PTSD with all these things that happen when he's just trying to have a nice vacation. But we've been to a lot of Doctor Vacation episodes. Obviously, the randomizer loves them. Like, you know, he Androids of Tara, where he just wants to go fishing. The Gunfighters, where the Doctor on holiday meets Doc Holliday. We had that recently, and there have been a bunch of that. You know, and I
Tried
really
to go
like
to
it.
Floran. He never made it to Florana with Sarah, come to think of it. Then when
Yeah.
this is right at the beginning of Death to the Daleks. So
Well,
yeah.
what's the name of the planet that Davison's trying to get to, and he only gets there? It's the Eye of Orion.
Eye of
Yeah.
Orion, yes.
Yes, for 5 Doctors. Yeah, so Davison's whole thing is like, I'm trying to get you for an entire season to this
Yeah.
nice holiday planet that looks just like a grey, wet, wintry day in Britain. Oddly
But
enough.
yeah, but to your point, it's great to see them having fun and getting a chance to have
Yeah.
fun and sort of be themselves a little bit.
And
Like,
Tegan especially. I mean, Tegan
yes.
really is the breakout star in terms of having fun here. You know,
Oh,
she's
totally.
so into the Charleston. She is flirting it up like crazy with Lord Cranley.
Oh,
To,
well, no, like Sir Robert.
so yes,
Yeah, Sir Robert. Like that's
so,
a good moment where Tegan it's kind of subtle. I mean, but it's definitely there where they're like, she's, it's fancy dress, right? Well, we don't have any
mhm,
costumes. And Sir Robert speaks up. It's like, I was just thinking how charming yours was. And she gives him
mhm.
the, wow, could you buy me a drink, stranger smile? That is like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, and she doesn't dance with anyone else. You
That's
know, she's
right.
either solo Charlestoning or she's dancing with Sir Robert. So, yeah, definitely. If it hadn't been interrupted by the unfortunate murder and the revelation of the whole gaslighting about their dead son, maybe,
If only. Well, I do
maybe.
like that. Like, I got to say, like I say, the guest cast is great. I mean, Sir
Mm,
Robert, you like him. He's obviously very competent. He's is a cop. Technically, he's like the constable or something, but he's
mm,
clearly been probably all his life been surrounded by sort of this upper class people, and is now one of them. But then he gets very competent the moment there's a murder. Like he sort of goes into cop mode, and it's,
yeah,
it's nice. It's like it's a good thing that it's not quite a switch flipping, but it is like, okay, I'm not dancing with Tegan anymore. Like
right.
something serious has happened. So like,
He takes off the wig just to emphasize how serious this is.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But
Um,
speaking of the guest cast having fun, I mean, obviously Sarah Sutton has fun and she gets to play 2 roles.
yeah,
Adric has fun deliberately with the buffet. Apparently, this was Matthew Waterhouse wasn't good at the dancing, so he suggested Adric should just be at the buffet. And this is sort of famous in kind of Doctor Who circles. A lot of people like to poke fun at how much Adric is eating at the buffet. And I've got to say, I mean, this is the guy's last meal. Come on.
right, yeah, pretty much.
Come on,
Because
let him eat as much as he
yeah,
wants at the buffet. Come on, don't fat shame, don't Adric shame, don't
yeah,
buffet
it's like
shame.
Earth Shock. It's never explicit, so you could make up headcanon to explain that it doesn't come immediately after
Mm,
Black Orchid, but there is an implication because the Doctor hands Adric the book that he's just finished reading, and
mm,
it's implied, I think, that it follows right after, even though you could argue, well, maybe they had a billion adventures and then he finally got around to reading it, right? So either way, but yes, it's more likely this could be his last meal.
yeah.
Here's the thing, like my kids, I watched this with my kids. My daughter, who she really liked that, I think this really got her to like Adric more,
Mm,
because of the appetite, because he likes to eat, because she likes to eat. She was like, that's exactly what I would do
yep.
if I was at a party. So, and it's like, yeah, I've certainly in my share of like being invited to free parties, and we're both journalists and members of the press, and you get like
Mhm.
it's like, hey, yeah, like the ones where they actually serve up good food are kind of memorable for that reason. Sometimes I will always remember the release of the BlackBerry smartphone. I think it was called like the Z10 or something. I think in 2013, 2014, that era, because they went all out on the food. Like the food was like 5-star New York food.
Nice.
So yeah, loading up, me and Adric, I could completely relate.
Totally. I mean, everyone gets to have fun of the recurring cast in this, and none less than Peter Davison, who was actually a good cricket player in real life.
Yeah.
And this is, it definitely calls to mind The Lodger, and that Matt Smith being very good at football. I do have to wonder if, does each regeneration have a particular sport that they're into?
I know.
Do these skills carry over? Was Colin Baker also a good cricketer because he still had Peter Davison's skills, or how does this work?
Could you argue Venusian karate is the equivalent of a sport?
Kind of.
Yeah, because it's like I'm sure there's a pan-galactic Olympic games where Venusian karate is practiced.
I love it. And doesn't Capaldi also say that he's good at that? So obviously that has transferred over from his poetry regeneration.
Yeah, so I think he might have these various skills that perhaps parts of his it's funny. Like you could actually headcanon this because your brain has to sort of get used to certain patterns to sort of get good at certain things. And maybe as the Doctor regenerates, certain pathways open up and certain other ones are a little more clear, which sort of also explains like the changing personality. And so he's built up skills throughout various regenerations, but certain incarnations are better at certain things because the patterns change. Oh my God, dude, I just explained this.
Fantastic.
I'm going with
this. Well, now I'm seeing a version of Brain and Morbius where it's just like, how many sports have you played, Doctor? The Olympics.
We got to get to Brain and Morbius sometime just
to make that reference. Yeah.
But yeah, apparently Davison was amazing at cricket, and there's a scene, a wide shot, where he is bowling the ball. Is it called a ball? What is it?
Yes, it is called a ball. But he bowls several people out on screen, and they actually captured that. Yeah, he played a lot of charity cricket matches, apparently.
Nice.
And also, this was filmed, I believe, right after Castrovalva, so it's very early on. At least
Castrovalva was not filmed first, though.
Right? Was it Four to Doomsday that was?
I think it was Four to Doomsday was the first one. Yeah.
And
they were still working on the script to Castrovalva even as they were starting the film. So,
but this is very early on. He's still sort of defining who his Doctor is in terms of the shooting schedule, right? And this is sort of his chance to show why the Doctor is wearing this cricketing gear. So I feel like a lot of it is he's investing the Doctor with that side of his personality very early on. But yeah, he bowls a few wickets. He's not acting there. He really does want to know if he's mid stump when he's at the crease. I'm literally using all of my cricketing knowledge. I know very little about cricket.
Well, me too.
Pretty much said it now.
Even though we were both from Commonwealth nations, and I remember sort of like playing kid cricket or something when I was in elementary school. Did not take. But again, the first episode, the setup is good. He plays cricket. He plays it amazingly well. And as a Time Lord, you kind of like you sort of get it, and you're also loving it because you've seen your main character do this thing. It has some very good comedic moments. Leads to anyway with Tegan and Nissa and Adric. Nissa and Adric just completely flummoxed, fish out of water, two fish out of water, staring at each other and wondering what's going on. With Tegan there, full on embracing this environment she's in. Again, like you said, she's the breakout star. Like episode 1, strong, so far so good. And it explains, it explains
Tegan's into cricket.
And it also explains why the mystery of who this guy is, he's allowed to stay incognito, as Charles Cranley puts it, for longer. Again, sort of believably. It's like it sort of adds a little bit more to that. So all the stuff is kind of set here for something interesting. And then Something interesting never really arrives.
Well,
Unfortunately.
so it is set up for anonymity, but that's sort of one of the weird ways in which Black Orchid differs from almost all of the rest of Doctor Who, from the usual doctorish behavior, is that the Doctor will normally employ pseudonyms for himself and his
Right.
companions in that sort of situation. We just seen it in the Gunfighters. We just
Right.
saw how he was Dr. Caligari,
Yeah.
and my companions,
Stephen Regret.
Stephen Regret, and
Yeah.
I can't even remember what he says Dodo is, but like that's normal doctorish behavior.
Yeah.
It's why he pulls the John Smith out so often. But here he's just the Doctor, and it's a little weird to see him
Well,
do that.
I think there's two things. I liked it because one, I see him going with the mistaken identity, or not really expected, that he's expected, right? He's sort of going with that as well. If I'm expected, I'm just going to be myself.
Mm,
Also, it allows for more of that satire of British high society, where he goes just completely honestly, like, Adric's from Alzurius, and
right.
Nissa goes, I'm from Chakan, and they're just like, okay, well, those must be
Oh,
cool
yeah.
nations or counties or provinces somewhere that we just don't know about, and they must be surely part of our class and people we would know. We're just not thinking about them right now. So they're kind of playing a little bit.
Surely.
There's a little bit of Emperor's New Clothes kind of element
Yes.
to it, which is what I really liked about it.
That is definitely a satire, I think, on the aristocracy of the British Empire. To assume that sort of Traken, oh, well, that must be somewhere in the Empire. That, oh yes, I've
Yeah.
heard of Traken, haven't you? Yeah, you can sort of see that whirring through the heads of the Cranleys as Nissa's talking about it, which is fascinating.
So
And yeah,
So
and then
speaking of
she's
Nissa, there's the
yeah,
whole thing where obviously Sarah Sutton gets to play both Anne Talbot and Nissa.
yes,
So obviously super fun for her. I think she does a great job.
she does.
Obviously she welcomed the challenge, and I'm sure it was super refreshing for her to, like, oh, I can do this. I can play something completely different from what I do normally, and she does a great job. But does it work? I mean, there's a weirdness to it, and I'm willing to go with it. There's a little bit of a, like, Prince and the Pauper kind of vibes. Like, do you need to
Yes.
explain it? Probably not. Um, I don't know. What did you think of that in terms of the twinning of Nissa and how it was handled?
I think it was handled well within the story. I think the problem comes when you start to consider how many doppelgangers there have been in the entire history of the show.
Hmm.
Like, so many characters have had doppelgangers.
Well, the
Uh,
Doctor especially, you had, like, the massacre, right?
yes,
There's the abbot there. You
yes.
had
The enemy of
Salamander, right?
Yeah,
In
the
Enemy of
enemy
the
of the
World.
world. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So, how many
Meglos.
doppelgangers have you had, Doctor? Um,
Meglos for, the 4th
Meglos.
Doctor. Yeah.
Good deep cut reference, like it. Yeah, so it's a trope that the show
Oh,
returns to over and
oh,
over.
and then the following season, Arc of Infinity, where Omega becomes,
Ah.
I don't wanna spoil it for you if you haven't seen it.
I have long time ago, and Arc of Infinity, and I
Omega
think you're
is
gonna
played
reference
by,
Colin Baker in there, but yeah.
yeah, well, there's that too, I guess, yeah, so thinking about that, and that, the whole thing they did with Capaldi later. Well, we'll get to it when we get to it, but,
Right.
him
And Matt
recognizing faces.
Smith in one of his Cybermen, episodes, the Neil Gaiman one,
Oh, yeah.
Nightmare in Silver, there are 2
Yeah.
Matt Smiths. Like, it's such a common thing, and so it's kind of weird to have this, especially after coming from the Gunfighters, the Doctor being mistaken for Doc Holliday. Like, it seems like they're leaning a bit too much on that trope without explaining it.
Yeah.
Like, did the TARDIS bring them here because Anne Talbot looks just like Nessa, and if so, why? Like, it just seems too wild a coincidence.
I know. Like I say, I don't necessarily think it needs an explanation, but it is
Mm,
it is sort of in the back of your head the whole time, and it's obviously just contrived to do a number of things for the story. I will say one of the things it does allow is probably, I think, maybe the funniest line in the whole thing, where Nissa is aghast at the plate that Adric has full of food,
yes,
and he calls him a pig to his face, and he goes,
and
"You
he's
can
like,
only be Nissa."
Exactly.
Like,
That it was almost worth it just for that joke. I love
yeah.
that. I love that sort of that kind of sibling rivalry that Nissa and Adric has never been better displayed than here. They kind of have this sort of they're kind of childish in their own ways, because
Yeah.
their own pasts and cultures, and I like their interaction here.
You
It
could
it
you could
worked
say
for
it's
me.
yeah, you could say it's sibling rivalry, or
Yeah.
you could say it's boyfriend girlfriend.
Ooh,
You
yeah, you
know?
could,
Like,
you
that's the thing,
could.
'cause if you have the look you look at the look that Adric gives her when she starts doing the
Mhm.
Charleston,
Yes.
um, that is the look of love, my friend. Like, he
And
is just, like,
Adric
so taken with her.
Adric does not know how to dance, and we all know what dancing symbolizes in Doctor Who. We know this from the Doctor dances. So Adric does not know how to dance. People take that as you will.
Oh,
That's why he and Nissa never quite managed to get it on before Earthshock. So, oh, poor Adric. The guy died without knowing how to
did he though?
dance.
Oh, we could read into it what we wanna read into it, but yeah. Again, lots of good stuff here, even in episode 2, because I believe that happens in episode 2
Mm.
of,
But I will say, just to close the loop
oh,
on
no, it is
the
episode 1.
the Nissa and Anne thing, I
Yes.
did actually believe it was very good work for the show at the time. Like, there's not a lot of they didn't have to CGI her in or CSO her in or however they did in those days. The stand-in for Nissa was very good, even though apparently
Mhm.
they had some trouble finding someone who had her build and height.
Okay.
It was a very difficult thing to find, but I totally believed it that they were both there in the scene,
Yeah, they did a
right?
great job. The edit looks
Yeah.
perfect. I mean, I suspect, and I'm not sure, there might have been a remastering at some point prior to the DVD release.
Mm.
Because I have this vague recollection on when I taped it on VHS that you could kind of see the line down the middle somewhere. But maybe that's just me remembering like the Parent Trap or something. I could be, but yeah, like looking at the DVD or the Blu-ray, it looks great. They're totally fine. And with the masks, I mean, it's a nice little sort of fancy dress outfit where they can sort of hide someone's mask or someone's face with the mask. So it totally works when one's in the background dancing and the other one is like in the scene with Adric. So yeah, they did a great job.
I love
So
it. I love that they're sort of instantly thick as thieves, right? They've gone off and decided to do this. They've decided to completely fool everyone, which is a
mhm,
nice thing to do when you encounter your doppelganger. Like, you don't see this level of fun with a doppelganger in any of the other Who episodes where they feature, and indeed much of doppelganger media
right.
in general.
Usually it's a
But yeah,
nemesis or someone from a parallel dimension or
exactly.
does not have your best interest at heart. What speaking
It's
of
nice
Thick of
to have a
Thieves,
BFF. Yeah.
I really like the BFF, a little bit of exploration between Tegan and Nissa. So they
Mm.
have a moment where they're getting ready for the party, and Tegan shows her the Charleston, and it's just a nice, friendly moment. Like again, like to your point, this holiday that they're on, and they're just kind of allowed to be themselves and share a little bit about their backgrounds. That was really nice. It added to sort of the depth of that relationship, and you really believe, like, yeah, Tegan and Nissa, they're basically sisters on the TARDIS, and they just have this great friendship that keeps going. And that there's a bit I remember at the end of Arc of Infinity where she's just super happy and thrilled that Tegan's back, and of course
Mm.
because she gets her best friend back, and
Aw.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they
Nissa
earn it. Basically,
really
they're earning it through moments like this.
she really loves her TARDIS crew. But something else we find out about Nissa in the story is that she doesn't like trains. She thinks they're really stupid. Um,
Silly, a
but
very
the
silly activity.
Very silly. But the Doctor does. And
Right.
and let's talk about this. This is
Sure.
gonna be my Deadly Assassin connection.
Okay.
Because don't we see a steam train in the Matrix in the Deadly Assassin?
Oh, I think we do, yeah.
I
And I
believe
think
that's
it
one of those
nearly
things.
runs over the doctor or something. I think
Nearly
that was
runs
kind of
over
the
the
thing.
Doctor, and the Doctor tells us here that he wanted to drive steam trains as a boy. Now
Almost as good as the other line. Yeah, that was a funny line too.
now this is just headcanon. You can headcanon this like crazy, and if you are a Doctor Who fan and a railway nerd and a train spotter, you're
Mm.
just this is your episode. Like, I really almost want, like, we talked about the spin-off stories that RTD is doing. I kind of want more Gallifreyan railway stories. That's
You
just
could, yeah.
Gallifrey is obviously a steam train society. We've never seen that in the show. This is what's being revealed here. Maybe this is
line-
why the Doctor likes keep going to Britain. In the
Yes.
glory age of steam trains.
Well, yeah, you could add kind of a lot of this. I mean, maybe there's a line along the coastline of the continent of Wild Endeavor. And, you think about there's like you could read whatever you want to in various lines, but there's a bit. Remember, we did the Mysterious Planet.
Yes.
And there's a bit where the Sixth Doctor suggests maybe this isn't Earth and they just collected railway stations here. And maybe that's a thing they do on Gallifrey because, they don't just collect trains, they collect actual railway stations
Oh
and
my God.
set up just the elaborate rail systems just for their amusement. Maybe that's a
Wow.
thing.
I love that idea. Please, RTD, let us explore. Let us have the railway children, but in on Gallifrey. Do something with that because, man, we're in the 21st century and the rail system really needs an upgrade in the US. We need to take rail systems more. We need to get more kids interested in them. So why not use Doctor Who for that? The headcanon is just waiting for from these few episodes. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's also do a little more. You almost don't want to like we've already just talked about things that we like about episode 1 and why it's been good for the cast. It almost feels bad to focus on episode 2 now and
episode
where
2
it falls
does
apart in literally like a million different ways. And as I was prepping for the show, I was doing these notes and it was just bullet point after bullet point after bullet point on like what makes no sense and
Yes.
doesn't work. But one of the things I kind of want to get it out of the way, the things that really doesn't work, it's Dietar Latoni. I think that's his name.
Latoni, yeah,
Latoni.
I keep thinking of like a
Indian.
Yes, I keep thinking more of a sort of a French Italian guy. Hey, Latoni.
Yeah, so they describe him as an Indian. Again, I'm not a scholar of history or geography, but I think that's inaccurate.
Well, I mean, Indian was sort of generally used for indigenous people of the Americas. So
Right.
I think, so I think you can have a Brazilian Indian.
It was, and I think in 1925, probably certainly less so today, but I mean, in 1925, you could certainly correct for that time. But he comes on, he has this lip that is sort of extended out. It's clearly a prosthetic on the actor, which is kind of an issue because they talk about it's a lip, but it's so clearly a prosthetic. It was even when I was younger watching this, I was a little confused. Like, what's going on there? And it's so bad that they had to loop his dialogue onto his like very few lines. He only has something like 2 lines, and it's so obvious. Like it sounds like he's radioing in to Lady Cranley, even though he's standing right there.
He's literally phoning it in. Yeah. Well, he's phoning it in. Also, I think the character of Latoni is phoning it in because he's clearly not very good at restraining George.
Oh my God.
He has one job, which is to make sure that George doesn't kill any of the staff or any of the guests. And he keeps failing at it. Like he's just not very good at tying him to the bed, I guess.
Well, it's also just not good at like keeping an eye on the guy who's just escaped and maybe don't lose yourself in a book with your back to him as soon as he's re-restrained, like what? Like that was the most weak sauce escape setup that I can't think of anything worse. It was really, really bad. So yeah, he's
it's barely even explained why he's there. Like he's a member of the good tribe that came along and found George, I guess, after his tongue had been ripped out.
Yeah.
And after his face had been scarred, and he, I guess, decides that he's his servant for life now, or like he's going to accompany him to England.
Well, my guess, I mean, not to be cynical about it, but he probably prefers to live with the upper class English folks in England and maybe in wherever his tribe lives in South
Yeah.
America?
Well,
That a
there's
guess?
one thing we know about Latoni is he likes books. So I think he's really just like George is maybe he writes on a piece of paper, "Come home with me, help, take me back to my family. You can read all the books you want." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm in. Sounds great." And then he's just totally focused on the books and barely learned. He should have really read a book on knots, how to tie knots, so he
Right.
can restrain George.
Well, and seemingly his last act, I actually forget if he dies. It doesn't die. Yeah, I think he's just
Mm,
rendered unconscious. But his last act of consciousness is not to save his own life, even though he's in mortal danger from George overpowering him.
mm,
It's to hide the key. Like
yeah.
there's a foot on his chest that's crushing him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna not concentrate on the foot and try to get out of this. I'm going to hide this key in the
In the
floorboards or whatever."
floorboards, yeah. Yeah.
And it's just okay.
Okay, good on you,
like
Latoni, I guess.
he's just walking atmosphere, obviously, and a plot device. There's virtually no character here, and
But
it's sad.
isn't it also the case that Lady Cranley is trying to gaslight the Doctor or gaslight everyone about the existence of Latoni? The
Mhm.
Doctor's like, there was an Indian chap with the lip, and Lady Cranley's like, what
From
are we
Brazil.
talking about? Yeah. She's like, what are you talking about? Which is weird considering that we've seen Latoni attend the actual costume party.
Right. He was right
Like,
there.
he was right there, and you're trying to gaslight us? Like, you
Yeah.
don't think any of the guests would have noticed?
Well, you also think that a guy on the job, the way Sir Robert is, would have
Mhm.
noticed and said, "Well, wait a minute. I actually did see an Indian with a lip because that's something you probably wouldn't miss if you're a
Exactly.
cop
Yeah.
and wonder what was going on." So that's weird, especially
Hmm.
since he apparently lives there. So wouldn't they just think, "Oh yeah, it's Latoni"?
This is
Like what? Like
Tony. Everyone
is
is,
he just going
hey,
in and out of
hey,
the house
Latoni.
at weird hours? So like a guy like Sir Robert just doesn't notice him. Like, yeah, it just doesn't work. Um. So yeah. Anyway,
Well,
lots.
so let's move on to George. I have a
Okay.
hard time understanding the cliffhanger. Why is, perhaps you can explain this to me, why is George strangling Anne?
He isn't. I get it. It looks like he is, and it's one of the more infuriating things about the cliffhanger is that he's obviously mentally unbalanced. He sees Anne is trying to get away from him. He wants to possess her, and because he feels like whatever he's lost,
Hmm.
and obviously he's not thinking well, not thinking through what he's doing. But he's not strangling her. It's only when she faints and you
Oh,
see the
okay.
hands close in and he's just strangled the servant and they're implying that he's about to strangle her. So what he's actually doing is he's just going to grab her and he ends up putting her in his room, and which he gets out of like immediately, which is again like
The
what were you
security in this
doing?
place is just shocking. Shocking. Um,
But what's infuriating is in the cut in episode 2 you don't see the hands anymore. And it's one of
mm,
those things, we talked about this with regard to Mark of the Ronnie and others where they do this different cut and
yeah,
sometimes
Planet
it's
of
okay.
Giants. Yeah. Hmm.
I don't know why they didn't do the different cut because it's like either you're scaring us or you're not, you know.
Right.
But I don't think his goal isn't to kill her. His goal is to somehow possess her and take her away with him somewhere. My
Yeah,
guess, if he
it's
has
Beauty and
any
the
thought.
Beast. It's like
Yeah,
classic Beauty and the Beast stuff, which is the original title for this story when it was pitched was The Beast. So like it's definitely wearing its origins on its sleeve. But also I'm actually thinking, I'm headcanoning this, and I think that the a great resolution to that cliffhanger would be like he looks like he's going in to strangle her, but then the last minute he just like moves the strap aside to see that it has
oh
them.
yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, oh it's Anne. Okay.
Well, he doesn't the whole thing is he doesn't know about Nissa, right? Like, he
Yeah.
doesn't know that there's a literal doppelganger, a literal lookalike, even if he has spotted the 2 dresses. So, I think that's okay that he's because he does sort of check at the end there, right? Because he kinda pulls the strap aside,
Does
when
he?
he's on the roof,
Oh,
like
okay.
and I wanna get to that in a minute, but he's again, George is mentally unwell, and it's, again, more of an indictment to the Cranleys how they're treating
Right.
him, and they're just locking him away. Now, again, I think you could correct a little bit for the time and that it's 1925, it's not like there was a lot of thorough mental health, help for people who were that way. And so I guess they just figured the best thing we can do is sort of lock them up. I guess I can sort of believe that, even though that I can sort of understand. I don't understand keeping it a secret, or at least not an open secret, so that just for safety purposes, like in that, like, he's got to be somewhere. Also, like, wouldn't it? Well, I guess it's a big house. Like, the stuff you would need to, feed and clothe. So yeah, I guess it would just be extra. But
Hmm.
it's just not. I can't abide by that end where they're just like, whatever, like, we're all friends again.
And why keep him in the house? I mean, we know, certainly fans of the Crown will know that it was a fairly common thing for aristocratic families like the Windsors to take the problem relatives and just stick them in a sanatorium somewhere. That was very much the
True.
British way. So why even is he in the damn house? And also, like, speaking of revealing your evil plot, like when Tegan is looking at the Black Orchid, and Lady Cranley comes along and is like, "Oh yes, my son George found that, and he's no longer with us." Like, you didn't even need to say that. Like,
Yeah.
just make up a story about the Black Orchid. Why are you revealing that George even is a thing?
Right.
Wouldn't that be more dramatic to say it that way? Especially if you're going to run a gaslighting operation, just
Well, Tegan does bring up that she's heard of George Cranley.
oh really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So she's looking at the Black Orchid. I mean, I guess you could argue, like, why even put it on display? So in the
Yeah.
first place. So, but I
It's
guess
brought
it
you
is
such
his work,
trauma.
right?
Why would you like? This is the thing that
Yeah.
got your son, got his tongue ripped out. Why would you put it on full display in the living room?
Yeah, apparently it's his work, right? Like, and then the doctor comments later that the book is
Hmm.
is great. Like, it's such scholarship, he says to Adric in the next episode. So maybe it's
Real
it's
page
it's
turner.
sort of unavoidable in the sense that, if he's really just known for this, maybe people would question why they don't have it out. Like, this is
Hmm.
your son's legacy. So maybe that was it. I think it was a bit of a stretch to suggest that Tegan is super worldly and knows about a botanist from 1920s.
Yeah.
That just seems like really remote Trivial Pursuit kind of knowledge, especially on Tegan's part. But it sort of gives you a little bit of more believability. Honestly, I think they would be taken with Tegan either way. She's just such an interesting, headstrong, confident woman. You can definitely see why Sir Robert likes her, and
Absolutely.
they're just, go on and have, dance the Charleston, and they're just delighted to have her. Even
Hmm.
though you might infer from her accent, and that she might be perhaps not cut of the same stock as the Cranleys.
Well, she's clearly, Australian, which it's funny that
Right.
nobody mentions that. Australian was Australia was made into a Commonwealth in 1901. I'm just looking it up now, and got full independence in 1931. So, maybe have a bit of a discussion about Australia's
Hmm.
place in the Commonwealth and Empire.
Yeah.
That
And
might
how she came
be
to be
done
living in
appropriately.
England.
Exactly, exactly. How did you come to be here? And that could maybe be resolved by the reveal of the TARDIS. Speaking of which,
Ah,
should
yes.
we get onto that? The
Let's
other
do it.
super weird thing about Black Orchid. Is it the only time that the Doctor ever sort of explains, like, gets out of a pickle by taking the locals into the TARDIS?
Might not be the only time, but it definitely sticks out like a
Hmm.
a crazy sore thumb in among Doctor Who canon. My kids noticed this too. Like, is that something he should do? I mean, and it also, just the way it's played once he does it is very odd. Like, I mean, the cops are strangely very calm about it, and
Right. It's
you,
not actually an alibi. Having a
yeah,
time machine is not an alibi to a crime, so it's weird that it sort of exonerates the Doctor.
it sort of does. But to Sir Robert's credit, he does say that. Like, he basically says, "Well, in this sense, you're forgiven." And
Yeah,
he's like, "In this sense?" And he's like, "Well, there's still a murder to be explained. Like, you're still a suspect, as
right.
powerful as you may be with this time machine." Um, so, and then what I did also like that he uses the TARDIS to
Yes.
go back to Cranley Manor, and again, one, boosting his credibility, but also like, yeah, just use the TARDIS. Like, why do that more, please?
Yeah.
Quick short hop. Boom.
A quick short hop. I mean, it's sort of a public transit service here. But also, it is weird given that he explicitly could not pilot the TARDIS at the start of the episode.
Right.
Right. It lands him in
Yeah.
1925 England, and he even admonishes the TARDIS, like, what is it, old girl? Why are you so obsessed with England?
I can headcanon that though, because he's doing a short hop in the same time zone, which I think is a different set of variables than trying to get somewhere in time and space. So yes, the TARDIS is always unreliable, but you can kind of, figure out in your head why it's a little more reliable at certain times. It's not perfect. But the fourth Doctor did say, I think in the previous season, I forget which episode, that he and the TARDIS are getting rather better at these short hops. So it all goes back to that evolution of the TARDIS, where it evolves from super random at the beginning of Doctor Who to where he's flying around with essentially, pinpoint accuracy in New Who. So this is sort of the midway between, and he's getting better at it.
Well, sometimes it's pinpoint accuracy, and then there are other times, like at the start of Rosa. Don't we learn that Jodie Whittaker's Doctor has been trying to get back to Sheffield 17 times, and that they end up in Alabama.
Why do they always got to go teens? It's always like 14 times with the Zygon inversion and 17 times. You can go.
So it does go back and forth, and I would love to see some sort of history of the accuracy of the TARDIS. There's a massive longitudinal study that someone can come up with based on Doctor Who history on one of these days.
But just to finish off on the cops thing, seeing the TARDIS, it's weird because they're so calm and it's like whatever. And even though, okay, I guess you're a Time Lord, like nothing is made of it. Like you get the impression in other episodes where the Doctors are reluctant to talk about his nature and who he is. It's because it would kind of dramatically raise the stakes just inherently, because all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, we're squabbling about, whatever the episode stakes are. And all of a sudden we've got a time machine and access to this time machine, and we can go anywhere in the universe. That opens up a massive possibilities to whatever we're doing, or what. And the fact that that's just like, oh, okay, well, time machine, I guess those are real, and we can, the aliens are here, and it's all good,
I guess none of those policemen wanted to make a fortune by going to the newspapers and telling the story of this weird time traveler with this bigger on the inside phone box.
Maybe this is a Clara Splinter explanation, but we can get to that later. So anyway, they do that. So, but really, like in terms of the worst parts of the story are still yet to come at that point. And to fast forward a little bit, the climax is utterly dumb and ridiculous. I mean, you're just constantly like, what are you doing? So, first of all, when George busts out again, we already talked about how stupid that is. And he sets fire to a door to break it down. And I'm going to give some points here because it's like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, even though I think that would never work. And yes, it's incredibly dangerous, but not just for the house, which they show. It's also just, I think you would kill yourself more before the door broke down. I think just from the smoke alone, you'd be dead. But
who among us has not deliberately set a fire to open a door? Stuffing newspaper.
In the commentary, and this sounds correct to me, but in that doors are sturdy, right? Like it'd probably be the last thing to actually burn down in that room. They're usually made, like, especially old, thick Victorian doors from presumably the manor was built, many, many years before 1925. Like that's going to be a tough thing to actually burn down. Regardless, I'll give it points. I mean, I get the logic of it. Go ahead and do it, and it does provide sort of the fire problem, obstacle. In the
definitely one of those things that you wouldn't put in New Who. You would definitely be afraid of copycat, kids stuffing newspaper under their doors and setting fire to it. Like, the very dangerous sort of precedent to set. Like, oh, I saw it on Doctor Who. I just wanted to see if I could open my door that way. No.
Don't do it. Anyone listening, don't set fire to a door
Exactly.
open it.
PSA, kids. Wait, the name of the show is Pull to Open. That's what you do with doors.
There you
You
go.
do not.
Boom.
It is not set fire to open. It's pull to open.
Important safety tip. Okay. Now, then later, after George busts out and everyone's crowding him, he somehow grabs Nyssa, thinking she's Anne, virtually unopposed. Like just grabs her. Suddenly he's got her. Which again, I think it's shot decently for this, but you kind of have to wonder, like, is anybody on the job here? Like, what are you doing? Now, that wasn't, again, both of these I was sort of giving a pass on, but then in the shot, he runs up the stairs. The doctor is like 2 steps behind him, and for some reason can't pursue him once he gets to the top of the stairs. That the flames or the smoke are too much for him now, even though he's a Time Lord, and we already know he doesn't have to breathe the same way we do. And it's already been established in Fort of Doomsday with this doctor that's the case. So, but for some reason he turns back. And it's like, well, what? And then that's clearly to have that quick bit of dialogue about the mystery and who he is and why he's so interested in Anne. And then they go outside.
Yes.
Because they I guess are assuming he's going to go to the roof, and lo and behold, he goes to the roof. And then they go back inside. The doctor's like, I'm going to go back inside and somehow get through what I couldn't get through before for unknown reasons. Plus,
so
Charles Cranley decides to climb the exterior of the house to get to him.
Yeah,
which
is
nuts.
faster. Yeah.
I mean, and here's the thing. Not only is that nuts, like I'm going to climb the side of the house because I don't, like, are you a mountain climber? Maybe he is. Who knows? But it's a missed opportunity because you could have had him sort of teaming up with the doctor and going through the house and having a little more back and forth there. And it could almost even become a little bit of a cop buddy ending, and not that it should take over, but you could get a little more between the two, which would have been something that would have been okay. But they don't even bother doing that. And the other thing I just thought of while I was sort of doing my notes was like, this would have been a good way to call back the priest hole.
Yes.
Because why would the doctor know anything about getting to the roof of this house? Well, maybe like that. We even saw a staircase in the priest hole. Like it would have been good to sort of see him use that knowledge here. But
it's the kind of thing you could set up with a line, and you could also set up with a line the notion that George is actually a mountain climber. Or maybe Lady Cranley talks about when the two of you were kids, you would just climb up the outside. I couldn't stop you. Maybe it's like Bran in Game of Thrones. He just can't stop climbing up and around the house, and that's all you need for it to be called back to in that finale there. But yeah, it's super weird, and also like they seem to take an extraordinary amount of time to notice that there is smoke. Like it's wafting across half of the set, and they're like, "Wait a minute, I think there's a fire."
Yeah.
PSA, kids: when there's smoke, there's generally fire.
So all of that, is my rapid fire bullet points of the problems with the climax, but it's all leading to the absolute worst. Okay, the worst, like the most nonsensical thing or incongruent thing, which is that the doctor says, like, basically, Lady Cranley says he's not going to hurt her. He loves Anne, and the doctor says, "Well, what's he going to do when he finds out he's got the wrong girl?" And then the first thing out of his mouth when he confronts George on the rooftop is, "Hey, you've got the wrong girl."
Yep.
What? Did they film that in reverse order? Like, what are you doing? Like,
cut to Lady Cranley going, "Ugh."
Well, cut to
face
Nyssa
palm.
on the concrete below. Oh, right. Like, you almost feel like you could be in the head of the doctor. Don't say he's got the wrong girl. Don't say he's got the wrong girl. You've got the wrong girl. Oh, my God, dude. What is wrong with you? This regeneration.
That's definitely how they play it in New Who, right? Yeah. Well, it has all these problems, and it's sort of a terrible mystery that you can easily solve. It's it's not exactly Agatha Christie level to figure out that it's the missing son.
Right.
You could sort of figure that out in episode 1, but it's almost like it just, for all these problems, it's just like a kind of a nice inoffensive story. I understand why a lot of people like it.
Yeah,
Also,
I
apparently,
can't.
according to the commentary, this was at least one fan's sexual awakening was seeing Peter Davison in a dressing gown.
Which again is
And
weird. He's not even shirtless. He's just kind of, you just see a little bit, a little bit of the
that's all you
chest.
need. That's all you need.
That's all you need. I guess
Peter
it's leaving
Davison.
enough to the imagination.
Exactly, but it's interesting because we did ask that when we went to Spearhead from Space with Pertwee in the shower. Like, is this the only sort of like shower scene for the Doctor or bath
Mm.
scene? Which I guess this is. We had this notion. I don't know if you remember in Spearhead from Space. We were talking about the idea that the Doctor, like, this is actually the Doctor's first shower in the entire series, and that's why the Time Lords could track him in War Games, is because they're just tracking his smell across the universe.
Yeah. Well, he finally bathed again.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
the
The
canon
Doctor,
officially.
no, the Doctor takes a bath every 2 or 3 regenerations. That's his rule.
Those natural Time Lord oils just sort of keep
Yes,
him fresh the rest of the time.
this is why he and Queen Elizabeth got on.
Yeah.
QE1. She was into having baths once a year.
So, I can't hate on Black Orchid too much. Like, I
Right.
was ranting about the things that don't make sense. But ultimately, yes, there's a lot of fun being had here. It's unusual, which is it's a little bit refreshing in some ways. And my kids thought it was okay. That was kind of their review.
Mm.
And they were both like, oh, yeah, kind of held my attention. But they picked up on a lot of the various things I did too, particularly that the doctors expected, and that it was just too short. They just thought, wow, it was just kind of like blinking and you miss it. Like, it was just over really, really quickly, and that's the nature of these 2 episoders. But it just felt like a bit of a tic tac of an episode.
Yes, I was watching a YouTuber. I believe her name is Mary Claire, who is doing a lot of reaction videos, and she did Black Orchid. And she was so shocked to find out at the end of episode 2 that was it. Like,
Mm.
even when it was over, like, the Doctor getting handed the book felt like a cliffhanger to her, and she had to skip ahead to see, oh, the next episode is called Earthshock? Like, it's a different story? She
Mm.
just couldn't get over that. And I think that's a lot of people have that reaction to Black Orchid. Like,
Right.
surely there's more here. Surely there's a missing episode.
It'll all be explained in episode 3.
Episode 3 is just everyone sitting down and kind of talking through, like, oh, that's why Latoni wasn't very good at knots. Oh, okay.
And get Michael Cochran, as Charles Cranley. I'm actually was first place mountain climber back in Oxford.
Yes, and then finally at the end, the other Doctor shows up. Like,
Right.
I'm here for the cricket game, and we
Awesome.
discover it's actually another regeneration.
Oh, wow! It's like Capaldi.
Hey, yep. What a way to end it.
Or maximize the hotness of everything we talked about this week. It's Smith. Boom. There it is.
Indeed, yes.
Before
Well,
we jump to the question, I'd mentioned him very briefly, but I did want to just shout out Michael Cochran, who I thought was probably the standout of the guest cast as Charles Cranley. I thought he was great. I thought his delivery of those nose in the air type lines, like ripping performance, old boy, like he really sold that old school Downton Abbey man of the house, man of the manor kind of vibe. So again, I for all the nonsense here, I got to say there's things to really like about Black Orchid for sure, and the guest cast and particularly Cochran here definitely were standout for me.
Oh, it's one of those, and we said this about Spearhead from Space as well. It's one of those where it's like the story is kind of beside the point. You're enjoying the atmosphere of it, and you could hate on it, but why would you do that?
Well, that's a good question, Chris. Why would you want to do that? But before we answer it, although we did sort of answer it, we're going to answer other questions, and those are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday.
I can't wait when we do the 4 questions to Doomsday for to Doomsday. It's going to be a very special episode. Anyway,
maybe we could add a question just to avoid a collision of concepts. Okay, first question: why did the randomizer take us here?
Oh gosh, I have many answers to this. First of all, the randomizer seems to love historicals. It's got kind of a thing for classic serial 2-parters. We've done this and the rescue. It loves Doctor Holidays. We talked about that. The gunfighters, androids, Atara. It's an episode that sees a lot of TARDIS usage during the story. Well, not a lot, but it's a critical plot point, which is something I said that I liked many pull to opens ago, and the randomizer has been obliging us ever since. I also mentioned Stockbridge the other week, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Doctor cricketing, we talked about in the context of Beep the Meep showing up in the 60th anniversary. The Doctor playing cricket in Stockbridge. He does a lot in his fifth incarnation. And this story is about as close as you can get to a Doctor Who story set in Stockbridge, on screen. It's pretty close. And also, we've just come from the Celestial Toymaker, which is all about games, and here the Doctor plays cricket. So maybe, the Trilogic game is the thing that Hartnell's Doctor was really good at. And then this is, showing off the Fifth Doctor's cricketing skills. Maybe next we'll go to the Lodger and see his footballing skills. So what else? You got any other randomizer reasons?
I think the randomizer is honestly probably trying to get us to like Adric and find the good in that character by showing us probably his less annoying stories, or at least stories where you can kind of root for him a little bit. And before it smashes us across the head with Earthshock.
It smashes our heart into 1,000 pieces on prehistoric Earth.
Yeah, along with our badge of mathematical excellence, which again he was still wearing in fancy dress, which I never noticed until this episode. He has the little badge there on his
wasn't that
pirate outfit or whatever.
That's such a beautiful thing that he still wears that. Like that's going to be his talking point at the party.
Ask me about my badge.
Yeah, exactly. That's really what it should say on the badge. Ask me about my badge of mathematical excellence. Poor Adric. I do have a soft spot for Adric, especially like seeing both sides of his death, seeing time flight, and now this. Like, yeah, I appreciate what you're doing here, randomizer. Yeah.
So the next question is, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
So this is an interesting one.
It requires us to find an evil plot, and I don't think it's George's. He's not really evil.
Yeah, he's not really. He's just, he's the beast. The Beast in Beauty and the Beast is never. He's always sort of like Frankenstein's monster. Like he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's just, he's a tragic figure. Very much in that Earth. So you've got to assume that the evil plot is the plot to lock George up.
Yeah, agreed. It's the Cranley plot.
It's the Cranley plot. And here's what I'm going to suggest that would happen. And I think this is entirely appropriate for Black Orchid. If the plot had succeeded and they kept George under wraps, if Latonia had just been a little bit better at knots and restraining George, the Doctor would have had such a nice time. I'm going to suggest that maybe the Doctor retires at this point.
He just loves these guys. He loves this.
He's like,
aristocracy
guys,
life.
Yeah, he's like, guys, I don't think we should travel on. Like, I've got bad vibes about where the TARDIS wants to take us next. Let's just hang out and play cricket here. I mean, and one thing I didn't mention in the segment of playing cricket, the Doctor hits a century, which is one of the few other cricketing terms I know. Like, he gets, without being bowled out, he gets a score of over 100. Which is huge, like especially for your first game.
Way over 100. He's like 140 something or at some point.
Right? So like he's on the edge of breaking some records, I'm sure. And that, given how much this incarnation loves cricket, that would be enough to have him just be like, screw it. I'm done with traveling around. I want to just stay here and retire here, and I'm just going to play village cricket for the rest of my life. And you guys seem to be having a wild old time here. Adric can go off and become a restaurant columnist for the Times of London. Wow. Clearly Tegan is so into this location. She just wants to party it up and get into Charleston dancing contests.
Hook up with Sir Robert. Yeah.
And Nissa and Anne, I mean, they could just be BFFs, and like, that there's a whole just series, a spin-off series waiting to happen where they just, go around parent trapping everyone.
Well, that's an interesting take on the dark version of the evil plot succeeding here. The doctor just
Right.
retires. I was a little more darker, I guess, just because I thought that them succeeding would mean that they successfully framed the doctor for murder, whatever that
Okay.
means. So Lady Cranley doesn't seem to have her heart in that. She does even says at some point that he'll come to no harm if he's innocent. But I
Mm.
do think, if you think the doctor lies sometimes, certainly Lady Cranley can lie. And if she's a little darker than that, and I think we can maybe presume she is, she frames the doctor for murder. The doctor goes away. His companions and say Sir Robert delivers on his threat that accessories are treated the same, so they're all sort of locked up. We need a jailbreak. There needs to be a
Yep.
jailbreak situation. And who's on Earth at this time? I think there is one Captain Jack doing some work for Torchwood. So this
Oh.
might be his first Doctor jailbreak.
Oh my goodness. I
Not,
mean,
and so like the first,
what
you
would
know,
Captain Jack make of the Peter Davison regeneration? My goodness, he's
oh my,
floating like crazy.
look at that. Yes. And then you got the two ladies in the TARDIS. They do not protest to meeting Captain Jack.
That's right.
Um,
He's going to make a lot of priest hole jokes. I think that's what would happen in that situation.
Oh my! This writes
Especially if the
itself.
doctor is in the priest hole in his dressing gown. I mean, that just totally writes itself.
Yeah, so that I kind of want to see that version of the evil plot succeeding here.
Well, what you get is, maybe if it's not a jailbreak, maybe what you get is a trial of a Time Lord, a regeneration early, like, but set on Earth, and it's like the Doctor in the High Court trying to explain time travel.
Oh, nice! And there's like the whole like I travel in time and space, and I think we have to presume the TARDIS hasn't been found at this point. And there's the
Yeah.
hunt for the TARDIS as the key piece of evidence.
Yes, and you can bring up H.G. Wells as a character witness.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny you should say because I have some connections for our next question,
Ooh.
which is where is the Clara Splinter?
Well,
Now,
we'll go straight
you
into that.
spoiled
Yeah.
yours already, but my thought, I was originally sort of racking my brain to fill in, as we do with the Clara Splinter, what's sort of the plot hole that might a Splinter might fill in. And I thought about, wait a minute, what year was the Snowman set in? Because
Hmm.
maybe the Clara Splinter in Black Orchid is the same girl in that she lays the groundwork for this episode somehow in 1892, which is when that episode was. So she's a governess, right? Um,
Right.
for British upper class people. So maybe the
Mhm.
Cranleys were in London at the time or close to it. And maybe the people in the Snowmen were the only people that Clara was a governess for, and maybe she met the Cranleys. She was maybe when they were the two
Hmm.
boys were very young. So if you think that Michael Cochran was playing older for Charles, and he's the younger brother, remember, that would have made him about maybe
Yeah.
7 or 10 years old at the time in 1892, and
Interesting.
George a little older, and maybe this explains why they're both in love with brunettes. They have a thick tooth for brunettes because Clara, of course,
Wow.
very pretty girl, and
Yes.
she builds great connections with kids. We know this. Maybe
Interesting.
that forever they're carrying a torch for Clara, the Clara
Hmm.
Oswald of 1892 version, and they end up both going for Anne Talbot.
Interesting. Wow. Well, by bringing up the snowman, you've reminded me that the Paternoster gang are probably active at this time.
Ooh,
So
yeah, it's
maybe
about
maybe
30 years
they,
later though. They'd be old.
they could
They'd be
come
older.
in but aren't they? Don't we see them like later down the line?
Do we?
In
I
do
I,
we?
re-
I don't know. I don't
I
know the
try not
years
to think
they're
much about
active.
the
Right then.
Paternoster gang. Spoiler alert on when we come to those.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, let's avoid the Paternoster gang. But yeah, I do. So I do have another explanation for the Clara Splinter.
Oh.
I've said that she's Smutty Thomas. I just say that to say Smutty Thomas one more time. Telephoning ahead to tell Lord Cranley of this cricketing genius called the Doctor who's going to show up. So he's ready, and the car is ready, and that seems an obvious explanation. But also, I'm like, maybe Clara is like, maybe there's some darker thing here, which she knows that the Doctor is like about to retire if he likes it here too much, so she needs to be the one busting George out. She's the one going around like loosening the ropes. She's a servant.
Oh, I
She
see. So
keeps
she's
going into the room. She makes sure that the beast is released. And and also
she's like a maid, yeah.
yeah, and I had an even darker Clara Splitter explanation here, which is she's giving George electric shocks and hugging him at the same time, so he has an aversion to hugs.
Oh, ouchies! This is right up there with Dark Clara that I posited for The Beast Below, where she's part of the memory police.
But you know
Oh,
what? You
wow.
could totally get that idea from Brave New World, which was a contemporary novel, and talked about this notion of electric shocks for aversion therapy. You know?
Ooh,
Yeah.
chilling Claras. Okay, lots of explanations here.
Clara, what are you up to?
Take your pick. But we got to move on, and we got to move on to the last question, the only question, the question we've all been waiting for. What do we think of this episode? And our rating system has 4 ratings currently. There is the Dalek, which is for a good episode of Doctor Who. The Ogron, for perhaps a not so good episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater, for an episode where not so great, but maybe we learned something. And of course, the coveted Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. What is this?
You'd think that given its aristocratic leanings, we might go for Viscount, but no, the Viscount is not present. The Viscount has not been invited to this party. At first, my first thought was to say that this is Professor Hater's Portrait in the Attic. Is the rating I'm going to give it, but now I think I'm going to go with Dalek.
Holy cow! Look at you.
Yep. I'm going to go with Dalek because it just like the story doesn't matter. You just sort of enjoy it. You have a fine time. I think it's not a great Dalek. It's a Dalek in the attic. It's like the redheaded Dalek stepchild that everyone in the family is ashamed of, and they just keep it tied up in the attic.
It's got a broken plunger.
Exactly.
It's like my scientist Dalek here in the Easter egg background.
Yeah, it's had its voice box torn out because it was a Dalek that was actually into orchids and took the wrong orchid.
You're almost convincing me. I was more in the Ogron camp, and I still am. I think this is an Ogron, but it's a nice smelling Ogron. It smells nice. He has got some perfume. He's been hanging out, with
he's
his
in fancy dress
buddies. He's an Ogron in fancy dress. But ultimately, like, I'm just so annoyed by all the things that are nonsense and make no sense, and they just annoy me too much. I can't quite cross over into this being full on Dalek.
The Ogron's having a final time at the buffet. Nobody else can eat at the buffet after the Ogron's been at it, but yeah, he's having fun. Well, interesting split decision. Didn't expect that. Yeah. Well,
I thought I honestly would like it better, given that I watched it a bunch of times and don't have bad memories of it, but it's underwhelming, and like I'll tell you who pushed me into the Ogron camp fully. Peter Davison.
Oh yes, we should talk about that.
The cat commentary.
Yes, it's sort of famous for this, right? That he really doesn't like it.
He thinks it's not a great story, which is weird because he had a good experience on it with the cricket, and he loves to play cricket, and he was great at it, and I had a good experience there. But he cares about the show. He does. That's what I like him for a lot of reasons, but I also like him that he was he was a fan of his own show. Which is great. But yeah, he was not a fan, and it shows in the commentary and his rapid pulling apart of various things, particularly in episode 2. I was like, okay, yep.
I've seen some rather cynical comments from Doctor Who fans suggesting that this was sort of seen as a classic at the time, and then as soon as fans learned that Davison didn't like it, kind of the received opinion on it flipped. So people were just ready to follow whatever Davison said.
Yeah, I never loved it. I remember kind of thinking it was fine. It's kind of a stop on the way to Earthshock, and I remember my sister kind of liking it when she was younger because of all the sort of party stuff, and that's why I think my daughter was kind of into it. All that stuff is fun. If you like parties and dressing up, and what kid doesn't? You'll be into it. But I can't get there. I don't really. Don't want to see it again.
I'm into the final time that we're having. We're definitely not going to see it again. It is now time locked. It's locked out of our Codex as we step forward back into the TARDIS. bringing a bunch of confused policemen with us. And by the way, I forget how we count companions. Do they count as companions? These policemen who've taken a trip in the TARDIS?
Yeah, they have. Oh my God. Is Sir Robert a companion? That's a good question.
Yes, that is the 5th question to Doomsday.
Do you have to like travel with the Doctor to another story?
Yeah,
if you did, then I don't think Katarina or Sarah Kingdom
or
would be
Sarah
companions.
Kingdom. I think it may be you had to be in 2 separate episodes of traveling at the TARDIS. So that might be the reason that they're not counted as companions here.
Maybe.
But maybe if you got that 3rd episode of Black Orchid that we realize that we really need, maybe the policeman would count and Sir Robert would count as official companions.
Well, we're going to have to leave that one a bit of a mystery and perhaps unanswered, because it's time for us to go.
It's really time to go.
It's really time to go. It's really time to figure out where we're going next, though.
Yes.
And we have to activate the randomizer.
Yes, the randomizer, 2 parts. I'm using random.org to find a random number because computers are terrible at random number algorithms. They're just guessing at randomness. But random.org uses atmospheric noise, just like the Doctor would, bespoke atmospheric noise to generate a true random number. Now, what random number, you say? Well, that's generated via, it's looking at the Codex, which Peter's looking at now, which is our spreadsheet. Which has been upgraded, a spiffy new codex, to ensure, in part, that we will never visit Black Orchid again.
That was the whole idea. Yes, we have the Pull to Open Codex, which of course is a listing of every single episode of the television show Doctor Who in a sequential order, and we have given every one of those stories a number. And the story number may differ from certain other compilations of this nature because we had to make certain calls at the beginning that might differ from official story numbers as to what constitutes a separate story. But there is also a randomizer number for every adventure now, which skips the ones we've already done for the podcast. So boom, no more time locked episodes. What we're going to do is call up a randomizer number. And that is between, even though there are 302 stories by our account, the randomizer number will be between 1 and 233 this week.
233. I love this new randomizer setup because we get to see those numbers tick down slowly
every week.
With every week that we do. But before I hit the generate button and generate a random number between 1 and 233, we do like to challenge the randomizer. And this week, I would like to challenge the randomizer. I had a great time in the 1920s. Take us to another 1920s episode. There seem to be quite a few.
Well, I had a good time enjoying the food. So get us something where the crew doesn't have to consume food or drink, but get us something like food themed. Sometimes food's part of the plot. Sort of remembering that was, I think maybe the Power of Crawl or something was, there's been Soylent Green sort of type episodes in Doctor Who. You can do one of those, or just something where having a good old time, chugging drinks and having delicious, I don't know, prime rib or something.
Yeah, drinking screwdrivers like Tegan does. By the way, Tegan is the only one to consume alcohol in this episode.
Yeah.
With her screwdriver. She's allowed, which maybe is the reason why she's flirting with Sir Robert.
Which is funny. I always sort of thought of them as all around the same age, and maybe that just shows how young I was when I was watching it, that I didn't understand why Nyssa or Adric was considered a kid.
Right.
They all just seem like kids.
They really do. But yeah, interesting choice of food-based episode. Also, that could include jelly babies, which would get to this issue of the fact that we haven't done a lot of Tom Baker.
Right.
Randomizer went through a sort of a Tom Baker phase and now just completely ignores him. And Baker and Smith are definitely our least represented doctors on the show. So jelly babies might be a way to get in there. So let's see.
Let's see. All right. Let us spin up random.org. Are you ready, sir?
I am ready. Give me a countdown.
Time for the countdown. Here we go. In 4, 3, 2, 1.
Excellent.
229. I believe
Okay.
we're in Jody.
We're in Jody. Maybe. We are.
Maybe.
It's Revolution of the Daleks.
Oh, okay.
Boom.
All right.
That's
I
an
forget.
interesting one.
I'm forgetting which of the Daleks this one is. Is this the one with the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yes.
This is the one with the two factions. I mean, the weird Daleks
Yeah,
that are based on the previous New Year's special become an
that's
army,
right.
and then the real Daleks come, and there's a fight. So
It's the
yeah.
one after Resolution.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Funny. I think I already got the connection. I was just talking about Captain Jack. He's all over this one.
Is he? Is he? Are we thinking of Chris North? Yeah.
I think they're both in this one.
Very-
Unless I'm completely misremembering. I haven't seen this. I've only seen this once, and only when it was broadcast. So this will be good. Yeah, back to Whitaker.
I love it.
First Whitaker since Witchfinders.
Right, and certainly the most up-to-date story that the randomizer has sent us to.
Yeah. That is. Yeah, it's the most recent story. You're right. Because we did when we were non-random, we did Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children, but we have not done anything post-Revolution. It has not come up. Here we go. We're inching our way towards the power of the Doctor, and you can inch your way toward it with us when you come back next time to listen on what we think of Revolution of the Daleks. Hey guys, this is Pull to Open. It's a podcast. Podcasts are a thing you like to subscribe to. So go ahead on whatever app you're listening to us. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. If you already do subscribe to the podcast in a podcast app, there's also a place called YouTube where we're at. And it would really be great if you subscribe there too. We have a lot of great followers and a lot of great conversation going on there. Trust me, you want to be there for it. youtube.com/pull to open. Follow us on the socials. We're uploading videos like crazy. Like we're crazy video prolific producing crazy people in an attic. And that's all we do is just make TikTok videos. They're on TikTok. It's at TikTok at Pull to Open on TikTok. We also like to chat with people on Twitter. Pull to Open 63 is our handle there. And it is the same handle on Instagram. Oh, final words, Chris.
Oh, final words. You're absolutely right. Captain Jack is in Revolution of the Daleks, which is going to make it our fourth Captain Jack story that we've been taken to. The randomizer clearly taken with Captain Jack.
Hey, I'm just glad the randomizer listens to me. I've clearly I've got my finger on the pulse here. The randomizer's looking at me like Tegan was looking at Sir Robert when he complimented her outfit.
Indeed, it's not taken us the 1920s. It's not even taken us the 2020s. This is 2019. So thanks, randomizer. Thanks,
I will buy you a drink, randomizer. All right.
All right. We'll see you next time for Revolution of the Daleks.
Bye, folks. It's sure to be quite topping.